Hey everyone, welcome back to Life Turns, the place where ordinary lives take extraordinary twists. I'm really glad you're here today because what I'm about to share will touch your heart. This story isn't just about family, it's about betrayal, pain, and a twist no one saw coming. So sit back, grab a drink, and let's dive into it. I grew up thinking family was forever. My parents always said, we're a team, no matter what. And for years, I believed them. I believed every word, every promise, every we love you that came from their lips. But as I got older, I realized love can have conditions, painful, invisible conditions that you only see when things go wrong. It all started when my sister, Emma, got engaged. She was the golden child, beautiful, charming, and always the favorite. I didn't mind that, not really. I loved her. I was happy for her. When she told us about her wedding plans, my parents instantly offered to pay for everything, the dress, the venue, even the flowers. They wanted it to be the wedding of the year. I congratulated her and asked if she needed help. She smiled and said, of course. You can help me coordinate some things. I agreed, happy to be involved. What none of them knew was that, 2 years earlier, I had secretly invested my savings into a small event space that had become quite popular. It was my pride, my hidden achievement. I never told my family because they never took my ambitions seriously. They always thought I was the lazy dreamer. A few weeks later, my parents called and said, we found the perfect wedding venue. I asked which one, and they mentioned the name, my venue. My heart skipped a beat. They didn't know it belonged to me because I operated it under a management company name. I smiled quietly and said, that's a great choice. When they contacted the venue, I told my staff not to reveal ownership. I wanted to see how my family treated a stranger. And let me tell you, what I saw broke me. My parents and sister came to tour the place, and my manager, unaware of the full story, treated them as usual, politely. But my mom, she walked around like she owned the world. This could do, she said, as if the walls weren't even worth her presence. My dad complained about pricing, saying, these people charge too much. We can get a better deal somewhere else. I watched everything on the security cameras, my chest tightening with every word. Later that evening, I got a message from my mom. We decided to go with another venue. You wouldn't understand, it's for family. That line. It's for family. It burned. I didn't respond. Instead, I stayed quiet and let them book somewhere else. 2 weeks later, my sister called me crying. The venue canceled on us last minute. They double booked. I comforted her and said, don't worry. I might be able to help. She had no idea what I meant. That night, I offered my venue at a discount through my company email. My family jumped at the offer. They never realized it was me behind the screen. Everything was set. I was about to witness my parents host their perfect family wedding inside the very place they dismissed and owned by the child they rejected. Then something happened that tore the last piece of my heart. The night before the wedding, I got a message from my parents' number. Don't come tomorrow. It's family only. My hands shook. I read it again and again. Family only. That's when I realized I was nothing more than a shadow in their eyes. I didn't reply. I just stared at the screen until the words blurred. My entire life flashed, birthdays, holidays, those fake smiles, all of it felt like a lie. I wanted to scream, but instead, I made a decision. I told my team to proceed with the wedding as planned. I wouldn't ruin my sister's big day, but I also wouldn't hide anymore. The next day, I dressed up and went to the venue early. Not as a guest, but as the owner. My staff greeted me respectfully. When my parents arrived, they were too busy to notice me at first. They were taking photos, meeting guests, smiling wide like everything was perfect. Until Emma saw me. Her eyes widened, and she froze. What are you doing here? She asked quietly. I smiled. making sure everything runs smoothly. My mother turned around, her face tightening. "Why are you here?" "We told you." She stopped mid-sentence when she saw the venue manager approach me and say, "Everything's ready, ma'am. The vendors have arrived." My mom's eyes flickered in confusion. My dad frowned. "Ma'am," he repeated. I turned to them and said calmly, "Yes. Welcome to my venue." Their faces drained of color. My dad blinked like he didn't understand. "Your venue," he whispered. I nodded. "The one you said wasn't good enough. The one that's hosting your precious family-only wedding." There was silence, the kind that stretches forever. My mom's lips trembled. "You own this place?" she finally asked. "I do," I said, keeping my voice steady. "And don't worry, the bill's already covered." Emma looked like she might cry. You did this for me?" I smiled sadly. "Always for you. Even when I wasn't invited." As the music started and guests began to arrive, my parents stood frozen in the middle of the venue, the same one they had once insulted. They didn't know where to look. People greeted them, complimenting the place, saying, "This is such a beautiful venue," and I watched as pride turned into quiet shame on their faces. Inside, I felt a strange calm, not revenge, but closure. For the first time, I wasn't seeking their approval. I was standing in my own light, even if they couldn't see it. The ceremony began, and soft music filled the air. Guests were smiling. The photographers moved around capturing every joyful moment, and my sister looked radiant. She truly was glowing. As I stood quietly near the back, I couldn't help but think about how different this moment could have been if things had gone differently, if my parents had ever treated me like I mattered. But life has its own way of revealing truth, sometimes when we least expect it. During the vows, my mother's eyes occasionally met mine. Every time she looked, she quickly looked away, as if my presence reminded her of something she wasn't ready to face. My father stayed stoic, pretending everything was normal. But I could see it, that quiet discomfort that comes when pride starts to crumble. After the ceremony, the guests moved into the reception hall. Laughter, clinking glasses, and music filled the space. It was beautiful. Every detail had been carefully designed, the floral arches, the lights, the table settings. My parents didn't realize they were standing inside the result of my years of hard work, my sleepless nights, and every ounce of faith I had in myself when nobody else did. Emma came over during dinner. She hugged me tightly and whispered, "I'm sorry, I didn't know." I hugged her back. "It's okay," I said softly. "This day is about you, not me." She looked up at me with teary eyes. "Still, you didn't deserve that message." I smiled faintly. Some lessons take time to learn. Maybe today is one of those lessons. As the night went on, I tried to stay out of the spotlight. But fate had other plans. The wedding planner, who didn't know my family story, took the mic and said, "A big round of applause for the venue owner, who made this magical day possible." The crowd clapped, and before I could stop her, she pointed toward me. "She's right there, the amazing owner who made this event perfect." All eyes turned to me. My parents froze in shock. My mother's face turned pale. My father looked as if the ground beneath him had disappeared. I smiled awkwardly and waved. Some guests came over, congratulating me, saying how beautiful the place was. My mom tried to smile, but it looked forced. You could feel the tension rippling through the air. Later, as the night calmed, my father approached me near the garden lights. "Why didn't you tell us?" he asked. His tone wasn't angry, just lost. I looked at him for a moment. "Would it have mattered?" I asked quietly. "You already decided who belonged and who didn't." He sighed deeply. "You're still our daughter." I shook my head slowly. "You texted me that I wasn't family. Remember?" He looked away, guilt flashing in his eyes. "Your mother was upset," he muttered. "We didn't mean it." I smiled sadly. You did mean it. Maybe not forever, but you meant it in that moment, and that's what hurt the most. Family isn't about blood, Dad. It's about respect. And that day, you threw me out of yours with just one text. He didn't say anything. For the first time, I saw my father speechless, a man who always had an answer for everything, now struggling to find words. Meanwhile, my mother sat quietly at a nearby table, watching us. Her expression softened, but she didn't come over. Pride was still stronger than love that night. When the couple's dance started, I slipped outside to breathe. The cool night air brushed my skin as I looked at the stars. It felt strange, being so close to the people who once defined my world, yet feeling completely detached from them. As I stood there, I heard footsteps. It was my mom. She hesitated for a long moment before speaking. "This place is beautiful," she said softly. I nodded. "Thank you." She took a deep breath. "We didn't know. We thought you were still figuring things out." I laughed quietly. "I was figuring things out, Mom. But you never asked what I was figuring out. You never cared to know." Her eyes glistened. "That's not fair." I looked at her, gently. "Neither was your text." There was silence again, heavy but honest. For the first time in years, she didn't defend herself. She just stood there, taking it in. "I'm sorry," she whispered finally. "I didn't mean to hurt you like that." "I know," I said. "But words stick. And sometimes, they leave marks that never fade." We stood together in silence, listening to the faint music from inside. Then she said something I'll never forget. "You've built something beautiful. I'm proud of you." Tears filled my eyes before I could stop them. For years, I had waited to hear those words, and when they finally came, they didn't feel like victory. They felt like peace. I turned to her and said, "Thank you. That means more than you know." She reached out and held my hand for the first time in years. No cameras, no audience, no pretending. Just a mother and daughter trying to fix what pride had broken. Inside, the DJ announced the family photo session. I hesitated, but my mom looked at me and said, "You should be in it." I blinked, unsure if I heard right. "Are you sure?" She nodded. "Your family." As we walked in together, my dad gave me a faint, apologetic smile. My sister grinned through happy tears. The photographer directed everyone into place. When he said, "Family, gather close," my mother pulled me beside her and wrapped her arm around me tightly. For a brief moment, time stood still. The laughter, the lights, the smiles, everything froze in a single frame that felt like healing. But even though things were beginning to change, deep down I knew something: forgiveness doesn't erase the past. It simply helps you move forward with it. As the night ended and guests began to leave, my mom hugged me again. "Come home tomorrow. Let's talk properly." I nodded, unsure but hopeful. My dad patted my shoulder awkwardly and said, "We're proud of you, kid." When I locked up the venue after everyone left, I looked around one last time. The lights shimmered on the empty dance floor. My reflection stared back from the glass door, no longer the invisible daughter, but a woman who had finally learned her worth. I whispered to myself, "You did it." Not to boast, but to remind myself that even when family turns away, you can still stand strong. Because sometimes, losing their approval is what helps you find your own identity. That night, as I drove home, I replayed everything in my mind: the text, the confrontation, my mother's words, and that family photo. I didn't know what the future would bring, but for the first time, I felt peace instead of pain. The next morning, I woke up to another text from my mom. This time, it simply said, "Come for breakfast. Family's waiting." I smiled through my tears. Maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something new. The next morning, I sat in my car for almost 10 minutes before walking into my parents' house. It felt strange, like stepping into a place that was both familiar and foreign at the same time. The smell of coffee, the sound of the old clock ticking, even the faint hum of my mother's favorite morning radio show, everything was just as it used to be. But something had changed inside me. I wasn't that same quiet girl seeking approval anymore. I was someone who had finally learned to stand on her own feet. When I entered the kitchen, my mother looked up from the stove. She smiled, not the polite kind, but a genuine, warm smile I hadn't seen in years. "You came," she said softly. I nodded. "You invited me." My dad was at the table, pretending to read the newspaper. "Morning," he said without looking up, but I could tell he was nervous. We sat down for breakfast. For a while, nobody spoke. The silence was heavy but calm. Finally, my mom placed a plate in front of me and said, "I owe you an apology." I looked up, surprised. "For what?" I asked. She sighed. "For not believing in you. For letting pride get in the way of love. For that text." Her voice broke. "I thought I was protecting your sister's moment, but I ended up destroying yours." Her words hit deep. I had spent years dreaming of an apology, but hearing it now didn't feel like revenge. It felt like release. "Mom," I said quietly, "I forgave you long before you said sorry. But I had to move on. I couldn't keep waiting for you to see me." She reached across the table and took my hand. "I see you now," she whispered. My dad finally folded his newspaper and looked straight at me. "You've done good, kid. You really have. I didn't realize how much you've grown." I smiled faintly. I grew because I had to. We talked for hours that morning. About my business, my struggles, and even the nights I cried alone because I felt invisible. For the first time, they listened, really listened. No interruptions, no judgment, just quiet understanding. I could tell they were trying. And that mattered. Then my mom said something that made me pause. "We were so focused on giving your sister everything, we forgot you needed something too, our support." She shook her head. "I'm sorry we made you feel like you had to earn love." Tears welled up in my eyes. "All I ever wanted was to make you proud," I admitted. She smiled gently. "You already have." That sentence broke the last piece of the wall between us. The tension that had lived in that house for years finally began to fade. It wasn't perfect, nothing ever is, but it was a start. Later that afternoon, I walked through the backyard. The same yard where I'd once played as a kid, where my dad used to push me on the swing and my mom would call us in for dinner. The memories came flooding back, and this time, they didn't hurt. They felt like home again. My sister came over that evening with her husband. She hugged me the second she walked through the door. "You saved my wedding," she said. I laughed. "You looked beautiful. That's all that mattered." She smiled, holding my hand. "You looked strong. That's what I'll remember." We all had dinner together like old times, but it wasn't forced anymore. We talked about life, my parents asked about my business plans, and my sister promised to help promote my venue on social media. It was funny how the same people who once doubted me were now my biggest supporters. Before leaving that night, my mom walked me to the door. "Can we start over?" she asked. I looked at her for a moment and said, "We don't need to start over, Mom. We just need to move forward." She smiled with tears in her eyes. "Deal." When I got into my car, I sat quietly for a moment, watching the lights of my childhood home glow softly in the night. I thought about how far I'd come, from being the forgotten daughter to the woman who owned her power, her voice, and her story. Life had turned in ways I never imagined, but somehow, it turned toward healing. I realized then that forgiveness isn't about letting others off the hook, it's about freeing yourself from the weight of what they did. It's about choosing peace over pain. As I drove past my venue on the way home, I slowed down and looked at the building. The lights were off, but the sign still glowed faintly in the dark, like a reminder of every struggle, every tear, every night I refused to give up. Sometimes, the people who hurt us the most are the ones who teach us our greatest lessons. And my lesson was clear: family isn't just who you're born to, it's who shows up for you when it matters. That night, before bed, I received another text from my mom. It said, "Proud doesn't even begin to cover it. Love you." For the first time in years, I didn't cry from pain, I cried from peace. Because even though it took a lifetime of heartbreak to get here, I finally felt like I belonged, not because they accepted me, but because I finally accepted myself. So if you're listening to this and you've ever been told you're not enough, or not family, or not worthy, remember this: your worth doesn't come from others' approval. It comes from knowing who you are, even when no one else does. And maybe one day, like me, you'll look back and realize that the moments that broke you were actually the ones that built you.